Good Shabbos, everyone. All of us are aware that on average, modern-day Americans are not getting enough sleep. Today, they tell us that 40% of Americans get less than 6 hours a night, creating all types of serious health issues. And our American culture of sleeplessness has even been even more propelled by technologies like smartphones and Netflix, which have given us even more opportunities to stay awake in an increasingly 24/7 world. When my wife Lisa and I were first married, before we had kids, we could sleep as long as we liked. And we used to take long Shabbat afternoon naps. Those were the days. But after we had children, forget about it. No more Shabbat afternoon naps. Even though we weren't getting more than a few hours of sleep a night and needed a nap more than ever before. I remember when my oldest son Joshua was just an infant and we were living in Los Angeles. There was an ad on a city bus for a new local gym that got me through those difficult years. The ad read, "Don't sleep, work out more, because when you die, you'll have all the time in the world to sleep." I know, a very encouraging ad. But that's what I told myself. I don't really need the sleep anyway. I'm young, I can just fight through it. And when my kids were in preschool and grade school, there was no way they were ever going to let me take a nap. My Shabbat afternoons were full of walks to the park, endless games and activities. But then they became teenagers. Now, so I won't bother them, my teens want me to go take a nap. But trust me, I'm okay with it. It's nice to get my Shabbat naps back. Of course, there are times when sleep can be a very good thing for all of us, no matter our age, but not all the time. Because too often, as a rabbi, I see people who are always sleeping, not literally sleeping, figuratively sleeping. People who in many ways are just existing, not really living. People who sleep through their life rather than deal with their challenges, rather than deal with their imperfections, rather than deal with their mistakes. It's like they're asleep, sleepwalking, just sleepwalking through their lives. They think they're fully awake. They believe they're fully alive, but I'm not always so sure. They're what I would call if-then people. They think, if only I had this new job, then things would be better. Or if only my spouse or my children or my parents or my friends were better, then my life would be better. Believing things could only improve if something about their life could change. So too often they live in some type of dream state, dreaming of a life they think could be better instead of appreciating and being alive, appreciating what they do have in their lives. In the process, they end up missing their waking hours every day. They sleepwalk through their lives, living in a make-believe world, dreaming that they were someone else. They're people who are never their authentic selves, who would rather be someone else their entire lives than be alive and awake and confront their true identities, their true selves. In our Torah portion this morning, and throughout his life up until today, as we read in the Torah, our ancestor Jacob tried that. For years, whenever Jacob was in a difficult situation, he responded by lying, acting like he was someone else, dreaming that he had a different existence. Jacob would rather try to escape than confront his own problems head on. Yes, Jacob carries with him so much inner turmoil. He has guilt about lying to his father, remorse for having duped his brother, anxiety about being out in the world, alienated from his family, alone, and fearful about his future. But in this week's reading, Jacob can no longer run away from his challenges. After 20 years, his very angry brother Esau, who he stole his birthright and his blessing, is approaching with 400 armed men. A brother whose parting words 2 decades ago were, "The next time I see you, I'm going to kill you. You think you and your siblings have issues." During the night, before Jacob will finally have to encounter his brother Esau, it takes something dramatic to wake him up to genuine change. A mysterious nighttime visitor comes to see him. But this time, it's not just a meeting. It's literally a hand-to-hand wrestling match that lasts all night. Many have speculated, who was this late-night mysterious divine being that fought Jacob? Was it God? Was it an angel? I've always believed that it was Jacob's own conscience, the presence of God within him. Jacob had to finally battle his own personal doubts, his own perfections, his own failures. This time, Jacob holds on. He doesn't give up. Jacob holds on throughout the night and never gives in. He fights all night with who he had been, with who he is, with his challenges, his imperfections. And in the morning, by holding on, by continuing the fight, Jacob has finally won. Gandhi once said, "Each night when I go to sleep, I die, and the next morning when I wake up, I can be reborn." Literally and figuratively, when Jacob awakens, he's no longer asleep. He's no longer living in a dream world as an imposter. He's reborn to who he truly is. He's fully awake for the first time in his life. And appropriately, Jacob's name is changed from Jacob to Israel. As the Torah states, Ki sarati im Elohim v'im anashim vatuchal. For you have struggled with beings divine and human and have prevailed. From Jacob to Israel. True, he now limps. As it isn't the case with many of us, our struggles in life, especially with ourselves, do leave scars. But they also produce growth. They can also make change. Jacob is no longer the shrewd, cunning, and devious, immature child. Instead, through the process of introspection, remorse, and a commitment to confront his own failings, Jacob is able to make himself into a better, into a more genuine, into a more complete human being. Jacob is able to find the great inner strength to apologize to his brother and to change the way he relates to other people. But it took Jacob great effort. It took time. It took a real self-examination. It took genuine commitment to wake up so he could finally live. To realize that his unhappiness had a lot more to do with himself than with those around him. The model is there for us. There's a reason why the Torah includes this story for all of us. Why Jews are the children of Israel, not the children of Jacob, for a reason. We are B'nai Yisrael, people who have always been taught to struggle with the challenges of our lives, not avoid them by sleeping our way through life. During those times in our lives, when we find ourselves asleep and not really living our true selves, can we remember what God is saying to Jacob? Let your name no longer be Jacob, but Israel, meaning be your true self. Don't long to be someone else. Yes, it's easier in the short run, to sleepwalk through life, to live in a permanent state of denial. It's much easier to blame our circumstances, to blame others, to even blame those closest to us, so we don't have to work on ourselves. To believe that we just can't change our fortunes anyway, so might as well just dream about being someone else. To just dream about our better life. Plus, we're so busy. We've got our routines, and busy ones at that. Carpools and meetings, obligations and work, bills to pay. So we fool ourselves into believing that we just don't have the time to make any changes. Some justify it. I know things could be better, but I've made it this far, so why change now? I simply don't have the time anyway. Some go about it the wrong way and make the mistake of only working on changing their life setting. They'll change a career only to find out a year later that they're even less happy. It wasn't their job, it was them. Some will cheat on a spouse, have someone else in their life. For a time, things are better. New love can bring some excitement, but it's rarely long-lasting. because a year later, they're even more unhappy. They still want to make changes because it wasn't their family, it wasn't their surroundings, it was them. Is there anything sadder? But real personal change could have always been possible. Real inner change is always possible. Jacob reminds us it takes effort, it takes time, and it takes a genuine commitment so we can truly live our lives awake and alive. Yes, it may be easier in the short run to do nothing, but never, never in the long run. It's worth the work to fully be alive, because a sleeping person cannot really put his or her fully conscious self into anything. It's no wonder that the Talmud concludes that sleeping is actually 1/60th of death itself. Edgar Allan Poe said that sleep is a little slice of death. So yes, let's get at least 8 hours of sleep per night. But for 16 hours a day, let's make sure we are truly awake and alive. Shabbat Shalom, everyone.